This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago, and the guy was like, "You're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago." I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details. This episode is brought to you by Atlassian. Atlassian software like Jira, Confluence, and Trello help power global collaboration for all teams so they can accomplish everything that's impossible alone. Because individually we're great, but together we're so much better. Learn how to unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. Atlassian.com. Atlassian. Tap the banner or visit this episode's page to learn more.
All right, welcome back into Through the Ringer. I'm your host, Tate Frazier, and guess what, folks? It's NFL Draft Week, and we got two of our experts from the Ringer. We got Danny Kelly, we got Benjamin Solak, and guess what, guys? We're in studio, finally.
Yeah.
Not on Riverside, not on Zoom. It's great to see your faces in real life.
Great to see you. NFL Draft bringing people together. Beautiful event.
It's about time. Let's run trips right now. Let's get out there. Let's line up, and let's talk about the NFL Draft because, actually, before we get to the NFL Draft, let's talk about the biggest news in football right now. I'll start with you, Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers.
Yep.
He's here. He's in New York. I watched the video. He just walked into the building. A lot of handshakes, a lot of daps.
Yeah.
What was your first takeaway from the Aaron Rodgers experience in New York?
The Robert Saleh dap was very strong.
Very strong.
Talking about setting a tone.
Loud.
Culture,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
It was loud, right? Got that pop that you get, right, with the air between the hands.
Sounded like a winner. I don't want to read too much into it.
It's the Jets painted themselves into a corner and made it very clear that they needed Rodgers. He was going to be their quarterback. It affected the way I think the trade went down and the capital that got sent. But the long and the short of it is they have a guy in the building at quarterback who won MVP in 2 of the last 3 seasons. It's a good day in the office. And they got great young talent on offense that's probably going to benefit from Rodgers' kind of veteran presence in terms of how they're going to run that. And then they got a great defense. Like the Jets were a quarterback away last year, and then they got a guy who was really good at quarterback for a really long time. And we look at it just from that level, great news. Start looking at the contract and who Aaron is.
Don't worry about that yet.
Kind of the way he behaves sometimes. It gets a little bit more dicey, but keep it simple, stupid. Good for the Jets.
Yeah, it's good for everybody in the building. Nathaniel Hackett, right? He wasn't in the DAP video. But
Why is that?
I don't
What's up
know.
with that?
Am I
There's
reading
something
into
going
that a little
on.
bit too much?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Conspiracy. Maybe they don't need him anymore now that they got
the bait. It's like, boom, we got it.
The Jamal Adams video.
Throw the carrot away. We got the rabbit.
He goes to slide the Jamal Adams ID and just the door's not open. Yeah.
One of those moments. All right, so this happens. We're all excited. You know, Woody Johnson has his big moment. He got his guy. Zach Wilson, obviously, is going to push him in practice. He already promised that. It's going to be nipping at his heels. So that's going to be good. But I have the question now. Does this move make the Jets actually, truly a Super Bowl contender? And I'll start with you, Danny Kelly.
I mean, I think in the AFC, it's tough to say yes, but it gets them a whole lot closer. And I go back to last year, and it was kind of a joke, but it is a real thing. Like, when Zach Wilson was the quarterback versus anyone else, literally anyone else, put Mike White in there, put whoever, Joe Flacco. The offense was legitimately like 4 times better than with anything that we saw with Zach Wilson.
And I wouldn't say it was humming. You know what I mean? Like, it was working, but it wasn't humming.
But like statistically, any number that you look at, the offense was infinitely better with anyone but Zach Wilson. So getting a guy like Rodgers in, who, like you said, he's a really good player. Even if he wasn't so great last year, he fought through some injuries. You know, he lost Devontae Adams. So I think this makes them a very strong contender in the AFC. I don't know if Super Bowl contender is really on the table at this point, just with, you know, with the quarterbacks in the conference, it's tough. But
that AFC top tier of Bills, Chiefs, Bengals, you don't get to get in that tier.
How do you get past those guys?
You don't get to get put in that tier. You just like go get a guy and like, oh, you're up there. You know what I'm saying? Like I think the Jets are squarely at the top of that second tier of AFC contenders.
Yes.
Jaguars, Chargers, maybe.
Yeah.
Ravens if Lamar's still there, like kind of like that grouping. But you can't put any team's name up next to Bills, Bengals, Chiefs until they've done what Bills, Bengals, Chiefs have done, which has been great for multiple seasons, compete in the playoffs for multiple seasons. That's a rarefied group.
So they're plus 1,400 right now to win the Super Bowl. So if you believe in Aaron Rodgers and you think this is time for redemption, you can go get that in, get the money in right now. Is there another factor in this where, I mean, maybe I'm reading too much into this, but, you know, I'm a fan of football. I remember Brett Favre going to the New York Jets. Is he chasing a ghost of Brett Favre a little bit? Why is he going to the New York? Why did he come out of the darkness and choose the New York Jets? Is it because of the fit with Solak? Like, what was his reasoning behind it? And I'll start with you, Ben.
Yeah, what was Aaron Rodgers' reasoning behind anything is a tricky question. It can be difficult to get into with a lot of veracity. I think that the Jets were just a very good fit for Rodgers at the time in terms of the talent that was there offensively. Garrett Wilson, obviously, they bring in Allen Lazard. Offensive line was shaky last year, but they dealt with a lot of injury. They do have talent there. Nate Hackett, like it made sense for Rodgers. Also, money-wise, it was going to work, right? Like Rodgers kind of got it out there right after the trade happened. Like, oh, he's going to restructure his deal. He's going to help out with the Jets. I haven't seen updated details. From the most recent details we have, Rodgers still making money.
Still doing well. Doing well for himself.
Rodgers ain't losing too much. And so we'll see if there's an updated contract. Regardless, I think this was just the best situation for Rodgers.
Right.
And then I think on top of it, you go, oh, maybe I could be better there than Brett was. You know what I'm saying? That's probably more of like a cherry, more of a cherry on top than it is like kind of like an actual, agent, actual motivator.
And also another factor in this, I think a lot of people haven't talked about it. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers wears number 12. We all know Broadway Joe wears number 12. Retired.
Yeah.
Broadway Joe came out and he had some comments, which is always, you're sitting on the the edge of your seat a little bit. But he said, you can wear number 12, Aaron Rodgers. Will he wear number 12? Is that the expectation?
He's apparently wearing 8. He's going back to the number he wore at Cal, which vibes are off. The vibes on the Solak
gives me very much KD going and not wearing 35.
The vibes on the Solak hand clap, great. Vibes on Rodgers in 8, not as good. Conflicting vibes early on in the Rodgers experience, which is probably going to continue in the Rodgers experience.
I will say, in the video that showed the DAP heard around
I love that we're all reading into the DAP because I'm right there with you. I
he
think
looked good.
Yeah,
he
looks
good. Healthy to me. You know, maybe this darkness retreat really did help him turn the corner, get rid of all the bad vibes from the end, how things ended with the Packers. Maybe this is like, it's all good for him.
I think he found the light. Look, there's more questions than answers right now, as we both know. But do you think the Packers, let's flip to the other side. The Jets are excited. They're celebrating. But do you think the Packers got enough for Aaron Rodgers? Because like you said, 2 MVPs in the last 3 seasons. And it feels like, they got their first-round pick they wanted, but not as much as you may expect.
No, I think they did get a good return on it. The Jets, pretty early in the trade process, pretty much after Rodgers went on with McAfee and was like, I almost retired. The Jets were like, hey, can we not trade a first-round pick for this guy?
Yeah.
And the Packers held the line. The Packers were like, no, this guy won the MVP. You got to trade a first-round pick.
Right.
And so you have the swap of this year's picks, 15 and 13, which is fairly negligible. You got from the Jets a second-round pick this year, pick 42, which is a solid, important pick. And then next season, a second-round pick that can become a first. And critically, the conditions attached to that are that Rodgers plays 65% of the snaps. In terms of conditional picks that get traded in the NFL, that's about as light as it gets. Like, a lot of the expectations in the reporting beforehand was like, tie it to he makes the Pro Bowl, tie it to the team makes the playoff, tie it to he plays in 2024. To get just, he has to play 65% of the snaps in 2023, really, really light conditions. That's functionally a first-round pick. Like, that's how you should prepare for it. Injury aside, it's going to happen. And so, to me, like, the Packers got solid return for the situation they were put in. Right. Very expensive quarterback only wants to be traded to one team. I thought they did a nice job handling it.
Yeah, and they, this whole conversation was about who had leverage, right? And it felt like Aaron Rodgers, when he went on McAfee's show, he basically took leverage away from everybody, including himself, right? That was kind of the way I read into it, which is fascinating. And then looking at the Packers, they get the picks, they're happy, they're okay, they get rid of the disgruntled star in the building. Do they go for a quarterback in the draft, and then we can flip into draft talk? Is that something that we should be keeping an eye on, or do they love Jordan Love?
I don't think they're going to be in a quarterback market here. I think their plan has always been to develop Jordan Love and get him as the next quarterback in this class or in their program, and like it's worked perfectly. They picked him, and then didn't Rodgers win 2 MVPs after they picked him?
Right. They made him mad.
Yes. That worked perfectly. Great job. You got your quarterback to win 2 MVPs, and now you have a very smooth succession plan to Jordan Love, who you've been developing for 3 years now. Every time, or at least last year, when he was out on the field, he looked pretty good. Like, he was able to run the system. He clearly knows the offense. And so I think there's a very smooth, plan of succession here where they're just going to go right to Jordan Love, try and surround him with some pieces. Maybe this is why maybe they will finally pick a receiver in the first round after not doing it for decades.
If I'm Rodgers, I'm upset about that. If they take a receiver in the first round,
but you asked did Rodgers go to the Jets because of a Favre thing? Like, yeah, maybe. Will the Packers' offensive plans for 2023 be affected by Rodgers leaving? 100%. Yeah. You start Jordan Love, you draft the first-round receiver, and then it works. And you wave at Rodgers in New York. Like, hi, look at this.
Yeah, have fun.
This went pretty well for us, didn't it?
Yeah, we miss you at the Country Club here in Green Bay. All right, speaking of quarterbacks, I mean, that is the conversation when it comes to this draft. I know, Ben, I had you on the show. We talked about the 83 draft and how amazing it was. We talked about the 2013 draft with E.J. Manuel, how not amazing it was. I've seen people compare this draft to the 2013 draft, but the difference is we have a lot of quarterbacks in this draft that are supposedly going to go in the first round, and there was a lot of buzz. It started on Reddit. I saw this, that our guy, Mr. Mayonnaise himself, Will Levis, was up to be the number one pick overall to my Carolina Panthers. First and foremost, I'll start with you, Ben. Is that really possible? Is this something that was actually getting pushed out there to the world?
I'd be flabbergasted.
Me too.
I'd just be shell shocked. I think it's Bryce Young at 1. I think it's been Bryce Young at 1. R/Sportsbook did their work. Congratulations to them. Congratulations to the random account that said that Will Levis told him that he was
that Will Levis's dad? I mean, who posted that? That's what I want to know.
Will Levis went from 40 to 1 to about 4 to 1 on most sportsbooks. Yeah, and FanDuel went down to 4 to 1 to go ahead and be that first overall pick. He's received a ton of small bets to be the first overall pick, but in terms of the big money is still on Bryce Young. Levis, I think, is a much, much, much stronger candidate to go 2 to the Texans, or 2 to a different team, or 3 to a different team, but I think he's the next quarterback off the board. Quarterback 2, not quarterback 1. That's still young to the Panthers.
Yeah, so here we go. We got the draft odds for the number 1 pick right now. Bryce Young, and about 4 weeks ago, maybe a month ago, he was like plus 250. Stroud was a guy that a lot of people were talking about at number 1. Right now, Bryce Young minus 1,400, which, wink, wink, kind of says we know what the pick is there. Levis plus 800, Stroud plus 2,500, Anthony Richardson, who we all like here, plus 7,500, Will Anderson at plus 20,000. So I don't think Will Anderson will be the first name. And as Bill Simmons told us, he doesn't think he has the pop or the star power there. So not going to happen. Thoughts on Bryce Young, Danny Kelly? When you hear Bryce Young, you close your eyes. You see him walking on stage, number 1 pick to the Carolina Panthers, playing for Frank Reich. You know, Tepper and Saban had this meeting behind closed doors. How do you feel about that pick? Does it make sense to you?
It makes sense. I think in a vacuum, the fact that they traded so much to get up to the spot, it makes me a little nervous.
DJ Moore goes to the Bears, right?
Future first and a second, or a first this year and a second, and then DJ Moore also. And so to me, that's a lot to give up to get a guy who is, if he makes it in the NFL, is going to be a massive, massive outlier. That's the one thing that makes me nervous. Like, watching him play football, he's a very good football player. He processes very quickly. He's very accurate. He's really good out of structure, making things happen when things break down, and he has great field vision, and he can do all that stuff that you want from a quarterback. He's a really good quarterback. However, he's very small. He's outlier small. He's historically small for the quarterback position, so that just makes me nervous. You know what I mean? Like, I think he'll do well when he goes in there and plays, but you have to worry about the longevity, the durability. Injuries, are they going to stack up when a guy's 190 pounds? Like, this is a big man sport, and he's going to get hit, and that worries me a lot.
We love shades of, everywhere when we do our draft guides here at The Ringer. Shades of Fran Tarkenton and Stephen Curry was what you said, Danny Kelly.
Well,
right?
I said
Jason Kidd.
Yeah, I said.
Oh, Jason Kidd.
I had a
sorry.
different NBA.
You went Jason Kidd. I apologize.
Yeah.
I think the reason it's on my mind is because I wanted to ask you, Ben, why do we keep saying that he is the Stephen Curry of football? Why can't we find a football player to compare him to? And I want to remind people at home, Steph Curry's 6'3".
Yeah.
He is not 6'3". So what is that conversation, and how is that happening?
Yeah, we compare Bryce Young to Steph Curry because there's no quarterbacks to compare Bryce Young to.
Right.
You got to go to other sports, right? Yeah. If you're like, this dish is delicious, the sandwich I had is so great, it's like, going on vacation. Like, dude, there's a lot of food. Like, you use something with it. There's just nothing to compare Bryce Young to, right? You say, Kyler Murray. He's not like Kyler. Like, they weighed in similarly at the combine, but
body type is
look
different.
at Kyler. Yeah, Kyler's a squaddier. He's a thicker build. It's easier for him to take on contact. Kyler's a much better runner. He's not like Johnny Manziel, right? Manziel was another guy who was a smaller slider player, but Manziel was a dynamic athlete. Young is quick.
And he's like 6'1", right? I mean,
Young
like
is
4 inches taller.
Young is quick. He's twitchy, but he's not the runaway guy. This is not a guy who can actually break into the second level and create explosive runs. And then he's not like Russ, because Russ drops back there and then uncorks 50-yard moonshots that land into a bucket. Bryce Young's got arm strength concerns. He's not Baker Mayfield. He's none of these guys that you can like kind of say, okay, this guy's 6 foot, 210, so maybe he isn't like any of these players. The Stephen Curry comparison comes, and I think just like all point guard comparisons make sense, because Young has a wonderful understanding of space and feel and timing. He feels like a point guard running the pick and roll, where he's just kind of ducking and dipping and leaning against and kind of moving and trying to create an angle and create a lane, and then all of a sudden he fits the ball into a pocket you didn't think you could. That makes sense to me, but it's worth remembering, like, well, that's beautiful imagery. It's helpful to understand Young. There's a reason we don't have another guy to bring up, right? Like, people talk about Drew Brees. Brees was timing. Brees was exactness. Brees was precision. Young is all off script, screwing around, creating pressures, moving outside of the pocket. Like, they are very different play style wise. So again, it's good imagery, but we have to go into another sport because we don't have a precedent for Bryce Young. Doesn't mean he's going to be bad. Means that when you draft him, you're out on a ledge. Could be great. Could look like a genius. Could also look really dumb. And that's the risk of taking him 1 overall.
I mean, to be clear, I've got him ranked very high. He's the number 3 guy on my board. He's a very good football player. But there's just that's a huge risk, I think, taking an outlier guy like that, after making that trade.
You're threading the eye of a needle, man. You're really trying to window it with Bryce Young. And then even if you window it, 5 years from now, he's taken so many hits, and he's not a big guy. How is he still playing the same way? Can he still play the same way? 10 years from now, he's taking so many hits. You also start to worry about the longevity of a player of this size playing in the league. Big people win football games, and they win them for years and years and years and years. And Bryce Young, you've got to be concerned with his play style, the amount of hits he takes if he stays healthy long term.
I mean, the good news is that he's going potentially to Charlotte, which is the home of Muggsy Bogues, so heart over height, right? We've seen a small guy, go and win in Charlotte before, so maybe he can hang his hat on that. The other thing that I've seen a lot of people say about Bryce in general is that the game slows down for him, right? That's kind of the trope that we hear. Well, everything slows down for him. What happens if the NFL game speeds up? Because that's what I always hear when rookies talk about the game. They say the game's a little faster than I thought. I mean, is there a world in which this could go really bad?
Yeah. When you are a short quarterback, you're destined.
That hurt my heart as a Panther.
Yeah. when you're a shorter quarterback, you're destined for a certain sort of play style. Again, Brees is the exception that proves the rule because he was so good in structure, just ludicrously accurate, gifted player. But you look at Russ, you look at Kyler, you look at Baker. Short quarterbacks take deep drop backs so they can see over the offensive line. That invites pressure, makes the job harder on their tackles. They struggle to throw over the middle of the field because they can't see the bodies that are there. So inherently you're throwing to the flats, you're throwing deep outside. It's why Kyler is all 9 balls, Russell Wilson's all these deep moon shots, right? And then because you're that deep in the pocket, you're taking on that pressure, now you're scrambling, you're in second reaction plays.
And you need more arm strength because you're farther back from the line
of scrimmage.
And
you're throwing without your feet tethered into the ground, right? Because you're throwing under pressure and on the move, and so you have to use that arm more. So with Bryce Young, you are destined to a certain sort of play style. And I think Frank Reich can work around that well because Frank Reich is a excellent offensive coach. Frank Reich's just good at this. But he cannot run for Young. The offense he ran for Carson Wentz in Philadelphia, the offense that he ran for Phillip Rivers in Indianapolis, the offense that he ran for Matt Ryan in Indianapolis. You can't be running, all right, 3-step from the gun, drop back, hit your back foot, timing over the middle of the field. It's not there. You can't have it. So because you're destined to a certain sort of play style, it becomes a fragile mold for Young. If he can't work like this, it's not like you can change things up and be like, all right, let's try to run the offense this way. He's very limited in terms of the style of offense that you can build around him. Again, if you thread the eye of the needle, you got a special player,
right?
But you got to thread that eye. It's difficult to do.
Yeah, and if you're the number 1 pick, I think the expectation is that you will thread that needle and you will be the franchise guy. And he checks all the intangibles,
That's why he's
off the
overall.
field, right?
Yeah.
And Nick Saban vouches for him and says, I've seen him go against big guys in practice every single day. He's going to be all right in the NFL. So those are the things you fall back on and say it's hopefully good news. Speaking of quarterbacks that are, kind of shooting up, maybe more prototypical, Will Levis. Off the field, I don't like what I've seen. The mayonnaise, the banana, red flags for me. But I saw you talking about this, Ben. You talked about like the prototypical guy that he might not be your quarterback, but he looks the part. Yep. Will Levis looks the part. What have you seen from him, and what is the ceiling for Will Levis?
Yeah, when NFL teams talk about Will Levis, they talk about a player who was hurt a ton last year, but kept going out there and was fighting. Led the team, returned to school to play with a lesser group to kind of bring Kentucky up to the next level, right? To try to elevate the program. They talk about the way that he prepares Monday to Saturday. They talk about he's got his days scheduled down to the minute, and he's like doing all this work off field to be good. They talk about the way that he commands the huddle. They talk about leadership, all of the trappings, all of the accoutrement, the outside stuff of being a top quarterback. Nobody ever goes, and he was really good at being a quarterback.
Did you see the game?
Playing great, yeah. And,
Watch the tape.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you widen the scope, go beyond 2022 and get 2021 in there, he had Liam Cohen, who was then the Rams offensive coordinator, as his offensive coordinator. He had Luke Fortner, an NFL offensive lineman at center. He had Wan'Dale Robinson, second-round pick of the Giants at wide receiver. He had some NFLers around him. That looked like an NFL quarterback. It really, really did. Mm-hmm. Playing in an NFL-style system with NFL-style play calls, NFL-style route concepts. It's all very easily mappable into the league, as opposed to like a C.J. Stroud, who Ohio State quarterbacks have a bad rap. Ohio State quarterbacks don't work in the league. As opposed to an Anthony Richardson, who's, Florida offense. He's scrambling, right? He's running. They're running the option stuff. He's throwing the ball 20 yards downfield on every other attempt. Like, that doesn't look NFL-y. Levis very much fits the traditional mold. And we talk about the Panthers at 1 taking a risk, going to get young, taking that outlier. Generally, general managers want to take safe guys. They want to take guys who don't lose them your job. It's the number one thing. The second most important job for a general manager, win a championship. The first most important job, keep the job, baby.
Yeah.
Cash the check.
Kick the can.
Hold the job. And Levis is not going to lose anybody a job because he fits that prototypical mold of being an NFL quarterback.
Well, let's talk about C.J. Stroud, who probably doesn't fit that mold, as you just said. And obviously the Georgia tape looked great for him, in the CFP. People point to that and say, see, he can do it.
Right.
I've seen him do it. And he was a guy that a lot of people thought the Panthers might like at number 1 early on. Right now he seems to be falling, if I'm reading between the lines. What do you like from Stroud, and what is the ceiling for Stroud? I'll start with you, Danny.
I mean, I really like Stroud. He's my number 1 quarterback. He, first off, very accurate to every level of the field. I think that's the main thing. Puts the ball where only his receiver can get it, right?
He was made to throw a football.
Yeah.
It's so pretty, dude. It's so.
I mean, and
bright.
that's
I wish
kind
you
of
said this
important.
about Bryce Young.
I feel like that's
Can we go
important.
back to him?
Yeah. Yeah. So the ball placement, he leads his receivers. I think honestly, he showed enough as a out of structure improviser to say that he can do that at the next level. There were several games. It wasn't just the Georgia game. The Northwestern game, it was super windy. He was able to do some scrambling and off structure stuff. So I think there's enough there that he flashed that would tell me he's going to be able to do that. It's not like he's not going to be like a Russell Wilson where everything is out of structure, or a Mahomes or anything like that. But he can do enough because you have to create in the NFL. You have to be able to do that when pressure comes, and I think he showed that. So to me, he has everything you want. I think the reason he's falling is, number one, he's not the favorite to go number 1, and so people are saying, well, what's wrong here? Why is he, and
what did they see?
There's a lot of talk about
this
this S2 test that tests sort of like the quick processing and everything like that, which I don't know what to make of that because we don't have enough information on this test to really have any. What am I supposed to do with this? We don't know what the test is. We don't know the history of the
test. I didn't know anything other than I saw the tweet, and I was like, that's bad.
Right.
Yeah.
And
that's why it's being presented that way, right? It's
Yeah.
like the S2 test. Well, I don't know anything about this. And you see a list of scores. It's like 90,
It's a
90,
bad
90,
number.
90, 90, 90, 18. You're like, that guy's
number
not
is
good.
lower than the
Yeah.
other numbers.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
therefore, he must be bad.
Right.
But like if
and
you
Brock
look
Purdy scored well in the S2, which means it must be
Yeah.
good at figuring out who good quarterback
right.
is.
Well,
We're
back
there,
to
baby.
Brock.
We figured it out. Quarterback evaluation done.
Yeah, so the other thing I would say, like on the opposing side, he was clearly in a system that was going to help him put up numbers. He had all these ridiculously awesome receivers. Like legitimately, this is going to be the best receiver core he ever has in his career, like by far probably, because this is all Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's probably going to be a top 15, top 10 pick next year.
Emeka Egbuka.
Yeah, another probably first round pick. So he's had a lot of help where he came from, and so that could be looked at as a downside. But like I don't know, to me he's got the size, the accuracy, he's poised, confident. I like everything about him, honestly, other than this S2 thing, which is it feels to me like a red herring.
Yeah, and it also feels like something that some front office maybe leaked to.
Right,
Maybe
to
they
let him
might like
fall.
C.J.
Right,
Stroud and they
exactly. You
want
don't
him to
know.
fall to him, right?
Yep.
We know this is a world of smoke screens. The draft is always crazy. Let's talk about another guy that I know you like, Solak, and that's Anthony Richardson. He's got all the tools, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he can wow you. You watch the tape, like you said, it doesn't look like it's scripted. It looks like it's off script. It looks like he's just making incredible athletic plays over and over again. What do you like about Anthony Richardson, and what is the ceiling of a guy like Anthony Richardson? I've heard Josh Allen. I've heard Cam Newton.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good
Both.
to me. Yeah. I like both.
Yeah, fusion dance. Anthony Richardson, man. One of the first questions you got to ask yourself, quarterback, any position, as a general manager, do I get to draft this guy every year? Like, is this guy do I get 1 or 2 of them every year? And when you get a 4'4" quarterback who weighs 240 pounds, you go, okay, no, this guy does not come out every year.
Yeah.
This is an opportunity here. And when you start to get into the film, 12 career starts, right? Got some rough edges, got some rawness to him, got accuracy problems, right? He had a 54% completion percentage over his final season. Okay, there's work here to be done. But I think that to present Richardson as a year away from being a year away, as a truly raw prospect who's like a gamble, he's a shoot for the stars, a moonshot, would be incorrect. Like if you watch Richardson play on film, he doesn't scramble. He buys time in the pocket. He doesn't chuck prayers into double coverage. He checks down. He's doing mature things. He doesn't know every single time he's supposed to do it, how to do it in exact timing, with perfect footwork, while making a guy miss, all of that high-level quarterbacking stuff, all of the details that make the position so difficult. He's still getting there, still getting his head around it. He's still a young and inexperienced player. But there are moments in Richardson's film that are far more frequent, far more regular than are often presented, that make him, to me, much more so ready to play in year one, have some bumps, have some bad games, but by the end of the year, really start to bring it together, much more so than like a Malik Willis out of Liberty last year. Even Josh Allen out of Wyoming was rawer than Richardson is now. Trey Lance at North Dakota State went 3 overall, was way rawer than Richardson is right now. And so Richardson, it's difficult to find the team for him. Right now, like there's a lot of could take a quarterbacks when you get to Seattle at 5, Detroit at 6, the Raiders at 7, Atlanta at 8, Tennessee at 11. We got a lot of guys, but it's difficult to
Even
find.
The Patriots, you said, may trade up.
Patriots at 14. There's a lot of spots where somebody might be a quarterback team. So it's hard to peg where Richardson goes, and where he goes is so important because he does need development. But you put Anthony Richardson in a Detroit Lions uniform, Ben Johnson, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams. You got a stew going, baby. I mean, this is a high level NFL quarterback if you bring him along just right.
Yeah, and a lot of people like Anthony Richardson, like you said. We're trying to figure out who loves him, who's going to fall in love with him, and give him that opportunity to fail a little bit, learn a little bit, grow a little bit, all that sort of stuff. There's one more quarterback that could go in the first round, and 3 of us were talking about this off air. I'm excited to have this conversation. He's Hendon Hooker, and a lot of people seemingly love Hendon Hooker, especially in the mock draft space. They love Hendon Hooker. They like the fit. I've seen, your mock draft that is 100% correct, Ben. You had him going to the Vikings in the first round. Danny, I'll start with you. What do you like about Hendon Hooker, and why do you think he could be a first-round pick?
So, big arm. First of all, he's got a very strong arm. He's very aggressive. If you look at his numbers throughout his career, he is consistently pushing the ball downfield with aggression, but he does not turn the ball over. So that combination, aggressive downfield thrower with protecting the football, that's an attractive combination.
Obviously. I like that.
Yeah, so that is something that I think will probably be pushing up. It's like frame-wise, he's the right size. He's got some mobility to him. He can run around, make some things out of structure happen. So I think traits-wise, there's a lot to like there, but where you start talking about the offense he played in, the fact that he's 25 years old, the fact that he's coming off an ACL tear, those are the things that push him down for me. And the offense in Tennessee was just he's not going to be able to play that offense in the NFL. Yeah. And so the question is projecting what he does best into an NFL offense. And that's where I start to have major question marks about him.
And talking about those question marks, you have plenty of questions, Ben. What do you see? What do you like about Hooker? We'll start there. We'll start positive, and then what are the questions that you have about him?
Yeah, so that same allure that you build around Will Levis, NFL size, NFL preparation, NFL personality, NFL leadership, like that's all there with Hooker. That's why teams like Hooker as much as they do. They talk with him, they put him on a whiteboard, they meet with him, and they go, this guy behaves the way that we've seen other NFL quarterbacks behave. This guy's got the stuff from a personality perspective. 50% of Hooker's film is not translatable to the league. 60% of Hooker's, 70%. A lot of Hooker's film in this Baylor vertical choice offense. This is the offense like RG3 ran back when like Baylor was like winning national championships. This is not a translatable offense to the league. So much of Hooker's
feels like they just run 4 verts every single time.
So much of Hooker's film is put the ball in the belly of the back, pull it out, stand in the pocket. He doesn't drop back, just stand, and then wait to see where Jalen Hyatt goes. And all right, he's going that way. You can't do it in the league. You can't. So you can look at the arm strength, you can look at the size and say, all right, like these are NFL caliber traits. But Hendon Hooker is a extremely old prospect who only started producing once he was way older and way more experienced than everybody else in college. Started producing once he had multiple NFL wide receivers on his team. Started producing once his offensive coordinator ran an offense that tends to like break college football. Like all of these are like Hooker was not a prospect until everything coalesced to make him a prospect. He was productive and then got hurt. You can't have a larger collection of red flags on a prospect's portfolio for a guy who might go round 1. So if you like him, go ahead for it. It's a big risk. 26 years old, injured in a non-translatable offense. It's just way too many unknowns for me.
there's a lot of conversation now about, sleepers, guys that could bump up into the first round if a hooker doesn't go in the first round. What are some of these teams going to do? You mentioned a name. This is one of my favorite sleepers. It was the guy catching all of his passes, right? Jalen Hyatt.
Yeah.
What do you think about Hyatt, and is there any other, sleeper that you see that could bump up in the first round? I'll start with you, Ben.
So Hyatt's tricky just because in the same way that Hooker doesn't get to do what he did in the league, guess who also doesn't get to do what he did?
Right.
Jalen Hyatt will line up in a stack, right, where he's just 2 or 3 yards behind another receiver, and the receiver in front of him's job is just make room for Hyatt. And then Hyatt's job is just run. Nobody runs stack releases like this in the NFL. So Hyatt's going to have to get better at getting off press coverage to the line of scrimmage. He's high cut. He's a little bit thin. He doesn't have like a great NFL body. People thought he was going to run like a 4.2. He didn't run a 4.2, so he doesn't have like the insane world-ending speed. He's just got some speed. So I think he's a fringe round 1 player. It's not a strong wide receiver class, and he's a talented one. I think you're more likely to see, in terms of like round 1 sleepers, Adetomiwa Adebawore, who's a unbelievable tester at a Northwestern, 282 running in the 4.4s. That is a big man moving at high
That's
speeds.
just a first-round player.
That young man's cooking. And so Adebawore is a great one. I like Matthew Bergeron, the tackle out of Syracuse. Not a sexy name, but a very strong player who can make it. I'm trying to think of a fun one. Jameer
Syracuse had a good year
too,
right?
Yeah.
So there you go. It's some winning players there. Are there other wide receivers that you think could bump up there?
I've heard some Jonathan Mingo talk at Ole Miss, which this is not a class for big receivers. And Mingo is a guy who's got a big frame, played out of the slot, has had production. So he's the one that you've heard. Hyatt's teammate Cedric Tillman is another really dynamic downfield receiver, bigger body, contested catch guy. And that's what we're missing in this class. This is the wide receiver class of smalls. There's just Bryce Youngs everywhere, man. Like Jordan Addison, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, Darius Davis, Tyler Scott. Everybody is too small.
Dudes.
And so some of these bigger receivers, Quentin Johnson out of TCU, who's I think is going to go round 1. And then Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee and Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. Those guys I think are going to go higher than expected because they're the few big dudes in an otherwise very small wide receiver class.
Yeah, it's a lot of slot guys, right? And you can kind of talk yourself into which one you like the most. So it could be a Josh Downs. I mean, there's plenty of guys that you could fall in love with.
Josh Downs. What school did he go to again?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I love Josh Downs' tape. I'd go watch it if I were an NFL guy. I know we were joking before, there's usually like a random center that just ends up getting drafted 21. Is there a guy like that you see Danny Kelly? Like
there's 2 guys. At the end of the draft, usually at the end of the first round, you see some random guys come off the board for whatever reason. And a lot of teams are just like, hey, we don't have a starting center, so therefore we're just going to grab a guy instead of trying to wait and get too cute about it. Last year, that was Cole Strange with the Patriots. Kind of came out of nowhere. People weren't expecting him. That was last year, right?
Yeah. Chattanooga.
Yeah, Nuga. And so this year, there's 2 guys. Joe Tippmann and John Michael Schmitz are the 2 kind of
great
names. Like just
his name is my name, too.
Yeah. Seriously. So, obviously, people aren't really probably paying much attention to the center class this year, but those are 2 sort of names that you could see sneak into the first round as a surprise.
I like that. Is there any, because we have free fallers that happen all the time in the first round. Is there someone that is projected top 10 that you could see falling just because the fit isn't there or maybe some of the pub coming into the draft? I mean, we've had plenty of examples
We're
over the
at
years.
the best time of year is this week when there's about 20 players going top 10.
Right.
So you're looking at it going, I can't pick 2 players here. How am I going to get all these guys where they're supposed to go? I think C.J. Stroud's a potential to fall out of the top 10. I think Anthony Richardson has a potential to fall out of the top 10.
Yeah.
It sounds like the offensive tackle class is going to go very high. Paris Johnson out of Ohio State, Peter Skronsky out of Northwestern, Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. All of these guys can be top 10 picks. So I think they're going to bump out the quarterbacks a little bit. The other position that I think I could struggle to get in that top 10 is the corner position. Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois has long been projected a top 10 pick. I think he still makes it. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon might be the odd man out, where like he's been just, chalky. He's going to go like 8 for like 5 months. And now we're here like 2 days later, and everybody's like, he's going to go 8. It's like, we haven't actually heard anything new about Christian Gonzalez in ages. Are we sure?
This is the draft process, right?
Yeah.
This is the draft cycle is we ride the roller coaster of guys' hype. And, I've been surprised that you've been saying the Gonzalez thing because I think he's just such a well-rounded player. He tested out of, like, through the roof. He's an extremely athletic guy, has good size, good length. Yeah. Last year we saw 2 corners go in the top 5, right?
Yeah, and we saw it.
And we saw success, right?
For those guys. I mean, Sauce was like, he changed the defense for the Jets. And so I'm like thinking maybe this will push guys up this year.
Before that was J.C. Horn at 8 for the Panthers and then Patrick Surtain at 9 for the Broncos. We typically see corners go top 10, and I think that was just kind of presumed. I still, Gonzalez, people have been quiet on him. maybe because they don't want anybody to take him. You know what I'm saying? There's always that possibility.
Yeah.
The last guy who I would say is sliding a little bit is Jackson Smith-Njigba, who's long been the wide receiver 1 in this class. He's out of Ohio State. Excellent player. Very fun to watch. Very talented. Not huge. Not super fast. Not super dynamic. Not super elusive. Not a blocker. Just jack of all trades, master of none. Just a solid player.
Gets open.
That doesn't get drafted top 10.
Yeah.
Right?
And it feels like he's going to be a number 2 guy more than a number 1 guy. So it's hard to talk yourself into taking a number 2 guy in the first
It's like,
round.
we could play him on the outside, but we usually like our outside guy to be bigger. And we could have him, be like a slot for us, but we usually like that guy to be quicker. Or maybe he's bigger and then he blocks for us. Like, he's just always not a perfect fit. So you've heard him mention 13 to the Jets, which is now the Packers pick. You've also heard him mention to the Packers when they're at 15, now at 13. You've heard him mention to the Patriots at 14. That kind of like top 15 range has been hit for him a lot. I'm not sure that's actually where he lands. And I think there's a chance that he falls a little bit and the wide receivers kind of go more in a cluster around 20.
Well, guys, we're here on FanDuel TV, so we have to talk about the FanDuel Sportsbook and talk about some props. A lot of people like to bet the NFL draft, right? There's a lot of yeah, who would have thought? A lot of maybe maybe us, who knows? There's a lot of guys that are out there that are excited, and our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook have some great prop bets for the draft. We want to talk about a few of them. First up, the line is 4.5 for the number of quarterbacks taken in the first round. We talked about some guys slipping. We talked about the 5 quarterbacks who are under consideration. What do you guys like, over or under? I'll start with you, Danny Kelly.
I'm going under, even though I think there's a lot of steam right now.
Plus 164
for
if you like
Hendon
the under
Hooker.
there.
Yeah. So it moved. It was a lot more even, and now it's moving to the over and to the over and to the over and to the over. I think we're probably at the point where it's gone too far, and it's time for the under. 2 weeks ago. Over.
Right.
Now we'll see.
We jumped the shark officially.
Yeah. Hendon Hooker is minus 250 to go round 1, and that's pretty much what this market is.
Right.
It's fundamentally asking, does Hendon Hooker go round 1, yes or no?
Right.
Because the other 4 are going. And so, how much do you trust the Minnesota Vikings to go get Hendon Hooker? This is your question.
That's the question. The Vikings have been most strongly connected to Hooker, but there's a couple other teams: the Lions, the Seahawks, Titans. I think if you don't see him go off at 23 to the Vikings, you could see potentially a team trade up into the first round to take him because you get the 5th-year option on that contract, and that's generally why you see fewer quarterbacks go in the second round. The adage is basically like, if you have a second-round pick on a quarterback, take him in the late first because then you get that 5th year, and you get to save a lot of money if he turns out to be a good player. And so I can see it, but also, for every reason that we talked about with Hendon Hooker, I'm not sure teams are going to be convicted enough to like really make that trade and be that aggressive to come to the first round.
Is there a team that maybe, we get into that early 20s, mid-20s, late 20s, and let's say Richardson or Stroud? I mean, even Stroud, we've seen guys fall. I mean, I remember Brady Quinn sitting there, right? I mean, Lamar Jackson recently, right? Yeah. We've seen that. Is there a team that maybe says, okay, well, we weren't planning on this, but now that they're here in this range, we're willing to trade back into the first round and make a big swing?
Yeah, I would say the Raiders are the one that immediately pops to mind. Raiders are perfectly...
Poor Jimmy G, right? When he just gets
settled.
And
that's the thing is,
every year.
They're fine to roll with Jimmy G, and they're sitting there at 7, and they might, we like this guy. Like the Raiders, it was reported, tried to trade up for 1. So the Raiders definitely like a quarterback in this class. But if that guy's gone, then you stay at 7, you take a tackle, you take a corner. Raiders need everything. And so the Raiders are a great team to just hang out and pick. But then all of a sudden, right, if a quarterback starts to fall and you start to think, all right, we do need a future after Jimmy G, and this guy's falling more than we expected, Raiders are the first team to come to mind. The other team is the Titans. The Titans are trying to trade up for a quarterback. Like, that's been, like, for a while now. They were like, we're keeping Ryan Tannehill at the Combine. And then ever since then, it's been like, can we get up and get a guy, right?
His contract is almost up, right? And he's got, like, a massive cap hit this year. So they're sort of trying to figure out ways to get out of this.
So the Titans are another team at 11 could trade up, the same way the Raiders at 7 might try to go get a guy, or they can come the top around 2. The wild card here is Trey Lance. Every team that's thinking about trading that early second-round pick to go get a quarterback at the end of round 1 is also going to weigh the value of, okay, if we're trading a day 2 pick for a quarterback, do we like this guy more than we liked Trey? And in the Titans specifically, their current general manager, the new guy, is Ran Carthon, who was with the 49ers when they drafted Trey Lance. And so Lance is that wild card that you might want to trade up for a guy if he falls, but you also might want to kick the tires on Trey Lance.
And by the way, Trey Lance is 22.
Yeah.
And Hendon Hooker is 25.
Going to be 26.
So this is the...
It's giving me Brandon Whedon vibes.
Right.
He's not quite there. I think Whedon was 28, 29 at that point. But we're getting up there.
I want to throw out another dark horse team potentially taking a quarterback. The Rams?
Oh, yeah, no.
Trading up?
Yeah, they've talked about it. Yeah. There's been rumors.
I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly, they have an early second-round pick. And so they could be the team that just decides, look, we don't know if Stafford's arm is going to be okay in the long term. We're already rebuilding. let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens, and let's see who's there, and especially if you have like a guy that, maybe checks some boxes for Sean McVay. He says, let's take a swing and see what happens. So I like that. Another prop we have here is Hendon Hooker to be a first-round pick. FanDuel, the prop right now is at minus 250.
Yep.
So it seems like all signs are pointing to Hendon Hooker going in the first round. Shout out to Mike Tannenbaum. He was on top of this.
Yeah, and that's why, like, if you're looking at the markets, and right now over 4.5 quarterbacks is minus 225, and Hendon Hooker to go first round is minus 250. So smart better just take over 4.5, right? Because you're having to pay a little bit less juice, and you're getting functionally the same bet, which is Hendon Hooker going round 1, yes or no? A lot of spots for Hooker. PFF's Chris Collinsworth put him at 31 to the Chiefs. I don't think that's happening, but he got into round 1, and so we're all right. I think, Hooker, at this point, I expect him to go round 1.
I'm just
DK can't get there with me.
For no reason whatsoever, just my stubbornness, I'm like, he's not going to be a first-round pick. But everything, all the indications this last week is that he's going to be a first.
Yeah, to break the fourth wall for everyone at home, I feel like Solak, you're on the phone, you're making the calls, you're getting like the vibes of what people are saying, right? And Danny's like, I'm coming straight from the gut a little bit here, you know what I mean? Which is what we want.
Right.
We want that mix, and that's a beautiful mix and match. But Hendon Hooker right there, minus 250. Another name we haven't talked about, and he's a big one because it's a position that's been kind of cast to the side. Obviously, running back Bijan Robinson is the guy out of Texas. Right now, the line is at 12.5. The over is plus 120. The under is minus 160. We've seen him in a range from 8 to 12. Some people have him fallen a little bit. Ben, where do you see Robinson going in this draft?
I think 12.5 is a good line to hit the under on. You're getting under that the Falcons at 8, which have been the highest connected Bijan team. You're also getting the Eagles at 10, which have been really connected to Bijan as well. But critically, you're getting the Titans at 11, who I don't think the Titans are going to take Bijan, but they've talked about trading Derrick Henry. And
Just
this
the
team loves to run
successor.
the football. Yeah, and so if they trade Derrick Henry and they plug and chug Bijan Robinson back in there, football nerds everywhere will be screaming. The Titans are going to be in their draft room like, yo, we killed this. This is awesome. We're so
Look at us.
We're so good at this.
Yeah.
So the Titans, it's a non-0% chance. And then finally the Texans at 12. Texans need everything. And if the Texans are in a position where they might actually pass on quarterback at 2, then they're going to use this pick 12 to try to trade up and go get a guy. But if they get quarterback at 2, Bijan is very, very high on their board, and they need him. Dameon Pierce is good, but ain't no Bijan Robinson. So that's also, you're getting two really important teams in the Titans and the Texans as a little bit of insurance. I like under there.
I like that, too. And do you think Robinson comes in and starts day one? Is he that level of good? Is Saquon
Robinson's
level?
going to get like the 5th, 8th most carries in the league. Like he's going to be used as a bell cow immediately. Like he's going to be used touches in the passing game on third down. Yeah, the moment the Offensive Rookie of the Year odds open, I will be taking Bijan Robinson pretty much independently of where he ends up. If he ends up the Eagles.
I mean, if you watch the way, not only is he a very good runner, I think he broke the PFF record for broken tackles forced in his career, or in just this last season.
Yeah.
Wow.
And not only that, he is very good in the passing game. They're using him on vertical routes, like up the seam. There's one play in particular where he like jumps up and reaches behind him and pirouettes.
Yeah, he's got great hands.
Like he's very natural pass catcher.
Gifted
and so,
young man.
There are the Christian McCaffrey parallels in terms of like ways that they can use him. And so, from a fantasy point of view, like he's probably going to be a first-round pick in fantasy drafts, like regardless of where he goes.
This guy's the guy.
Yeah. So. Yeah, he's going to get volume.
And is he the only running back we'll see in the first round? Is there another running back that we see on the board?
So Alabama's Jahmyr Gibbs is expected to be a first-round pick.
Yeah.
I think he's about minus 180, minus 220 on FanDuel now. He was minus 180 yesterday. Not that I know that for any reason. There's reporting from Todd McShay of ESPN that there are some teams that like him more than Bijan Robinson. I don't know about that.
Yeah.
I think that's just the team that's going to take him in round 1 being like, yeah, we like him as much as Bijan. Don't worry about it. But he's a great candidate to sneak in the end of the first round. Like I said, he's favored right now, and he is talented. He's a good back. Well, no Bijan Robinson. He's solid. You have the Bengals and the Bills both at the end of round 1 who have some legitimate running back needs, some connections there. The Bengals have Joe Mixon only under contract for 1 more year. They need a transition plan there. The Bills really like James Cook, but it's a second-round pick. You can't put too many eggs in that basket. And then finally, the same team we talked about at 10 with the Eagles and Bijan Robinson is picking at 30 where Jahmyr Gibbs might go. And so if they don't get Bijan at 10, then your next running back opportunity is at 30. So there's a few teams there at the end of round 1 that just make sense for a back.
Yeah, there's one team, and you mentioned the back Derrick Henry, and you mentioned the Titans. Is there any world in which, Tannehill's contract, that whole thing, is there any world where Mike Vrabel, who has a soft spot for Ohio State, C.J. Stroud starts to fall a little bit, and he says, we want to be in the C.J. Stroud business. We want to make a big move here for a quarterback. Is that possible?
100%, yeah.
Easily.
I always end up connecting the Titans to Anthony Richardson because he's huge, and they're the Titans. We like big players. And C.J. Stroud because he's a Buckeye. And that might sound simple. That 100% matters. If the Titans draft C.J. Stroud, I promise you, in the first 20 words of Vrabel's press conference, he will say the word Ohio State.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
He'll at least say the.
The Ohio State, exactly. So it absolutely does matter. And he's also going to have the connections to that program. And so there are some teams that are like, we're worried about Stroud's personality, worried about his processing, his S2 test.
He'll have all
Vrabel's
of it, yeah.
right. Vrabel's going to be getting it from the Ohio State guys. Like, this guy's the man. Like, you know what I'm saying? He was awesome.
Yeah, I don't think Vrabel cares about the S2 test.
Yeah,
if I had to guess, I would think he does.
Vrabel's a cut of the jib guy. Yeah. Tell me about the cut. What's the cut of the jib? Was it like when you strike, when you land hands? That's how he goes.
The thing with the Titans, I think that makes it interesting, and I do think they could go. I've even imagined scenarios where they trade up for a quarterback, just because they're sort of this is a pivot year for them. They're essentially tanking, but if they could make that quicker and get this quarterback now and then start to build around him, I think that could be something they want to do. And then the other thing that's interesting is they signed Andre Dillard in free agency. He's not like a power tackle. He's a finesse guy, and pair that with the fact that Derrick Henry's getting older, he's not really going to be a part of their plans long term. They may be just changing their identity,
their philosophy,
their identity on offense. They're not going to they're just. Derrick Henry is a one-of-one player. They designed their offense around him, and that makes a lot of sense. But with Derrick Henry on the downside, now he's a little bit older, maybe they're going to go to a more pass-heavy, wide, spread things out type of offense. And so that could be sort of another reason that they decide to take a quarterback in this class.
Yeah, before we get out of here, I got a couple more questions. I want to ask about the Texans at 2. I feel like that's where everyone says the draft really starts at number 2. We're going to see what the Texans do. We have a chance that we could have the first teammates drafted back-to-back 1 and 2 since 2000 when Penn State had that. LeVar Arrington went number 2. So that conversation is in play. Do we right now, as we get prepared for the draft, do we expect to see Bryce Young, Will Anderson 1 and 2? The Texans go with the defensive end.
Do we expect that?
No, I don't think so.
I put that in my mock draft, so yes, I expect that.
Okay.
However, I'm losing confidence by the minute.
Wow.
Because Tyree Wilson is getting a lot of steam right now as the number 2 pick.
Yeah.
Could potentially be the Texans guy. He's a little bit bigger, longer, wingspan. Maybe they see that as a guy with more upside. I don't know. I don't see it personally, but I think they should take Will Anderson at that spot. But there's also a lot of Will Levis buzz happening for number 2.
Here's the thing about not taking a quarterback at 2. It means that Davis Mills might start for you again.
Right.
And that's a hard situation
with that.
to commit to. Yeah. So the read on Houston is that ownership is putting pressure on them to take a quarterback at 2. The GM, Nick Caserio, thinks that he can pass and then maybe get a guy with 12, trade up, whatever, kind of manipulate the draft and get the guy.
2 for 1.
But that's tricky. That's a lot of gumption. If you're going to pass on 2 and then go get a guy with 12, that's hard to do. You got to remember, the Texans were sitting pretty in December. We got the first overall pick. We're going to go get us a Bryce Young. And then Lovie Smith said, no, not so fast.
Yeah.
Multiple fourth
one
down
last play for Lovie.
Exactly. And then the Texans tried to trade up for 1 when the Bears had it. Couldn't get that done. And then the Panthers got the pick. I was like, they're taking C.J. Stroud. And the Texans went, cool, we're sitting pretty. It's going to be Bryce Young. We're going to get Bryce Young at 2. And then that plan fell through. So it's been a long sequence of plans falling through for the Texans. So for me, I struggle to believe that they're going to pass on quarterback at 2. And if they do take a quarterback at 2, it's Will Levis out of Kentucky. That's my expectation.
Is there a chance that, you mentioned Trey Lance, is there a chance that Ryans, who knows Trey Lance well, just came from that environment, says, I think we got a quarterback in San Francisco. Why don't we try to package this pick and go get him?
Yes, 100%. And that's why, if they pass on quarterback at 2, how did you get that decision across the line? How did you commit that way? You probably have a Trey Lance deal in your back pocket. Saying, all right, at 12, we're going to try to move up and go get Will Levis or go get C.J. Stroud. And then if that falls through, you press the big red button and Trey Lance is a Houston Texan, which feels a little better. Doesn't feel a lot better.
This is a perfect example of why this draft is so impossible to predict, it feels like, because not only are we unsure what's going to happen after pick 1, and I mean, we're pretty sure what's going to happen at pick 1, but not 100%. After that, who knows? And there's these 2 other dominoes that could fall in Trey Lance and maybe Lamar Jackson, by the way, who still isn't under contract for the Ravens. And so there's all these other.
He just tweets like cryptic emojis every day, and I try to read between the lines, and I think Lamar is excited about.
All I would do, if I was a pro athlete, would just be to schedule random tweets for random times in the future with eyeball emojis and
3 siren emojis,
and then just forget about them.
Right.
And then 4 months later, I tweet out eyeball emojis and I dominate the news cycle for a day.
Yeah.
Elite. I'm on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, I think you tweet "stay tuned," ... and then you delete Twitter for 3 months.
Yes, absolutely.
You delete all indication that you follow the Raven, like or whatever.
Right.
Nothing better.
Follow, unfollow,
no posts.
Nothing better. Think about how long it takes to wipe all the team information too. It's commitment. I always appreciate it.
You better hope they have a social media manager.
Yeah, exactly.
One last thing: the draft is on Thursday night. You guys are going to be here in studio watching it and reacting, doing a podcast, all that sort of stuff. But let's forecast to the future. We like to do this. We love potential. Is it time to start the Caleb Williams, Drake May watch right now? Is it tank for Drake's season?
Surprised you said Caleb before Drake.
Hey, I'm trying to be fair and balanced here. You know what I mean?
Justified. Yeah, I mean, like NFL teams.
100%.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah, every year NFL teams scout next year's quarterback class, and very often, not every year, but very often, they say, "Wow, next year's class so much better. So excited, can't wait for next year's class." And they're like wrong half the time. Like, Zach.
Weird stuff happens during the season, right? Like guys will end up not being nearly as good as everyone thought.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like, this is a common trope. The NFL says we're so excited for next year's class, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. This year, they got a good point.
Different. This time, it's different.
This is a good class, but man, Caleb and Drake, like, especially Caleb, I apologize, but man, like this class is a solid quarterback class, but there's no guy at one. Like we talked about the issues with Young and with Stroud and with Levis and with Richardson.
It's hard to poke holes in those two guys.
There's no Trevor Lawrence and there's no Andrew Luck. We'll poke holes in them. We'll get it done. The draft process is long. We will poke holes in them.
370 days.
But when you give them a cursory glance, man, I mean, Caleb looks like he could be really, really, really special. And that's going to impact some of these teams that don't get the quarterback they want. They're going to say, well, you know what?
Next year.
Taking top 10 next year. We'll check back in with you then.
That's what the Texans may be doing here. Is like we lost out on the Bryce Young thing because of we won that game at the end of the year, and then we couldn't trade up. And now they're just going to – I have this like feeling that they're just going to rage not pick a quarterback. They're just going to rage pick defenders or whatever.
I like it. Build a defense.
Yeah, and then next year like they can have a better support system for whatever quarterback they end up with. That's obviously a huge risk because you don't know if you're going to get the first pick, and whoever gets the first pick likely needs a quarterback and is not going to trade that pick. But maybe they just feel so upset about missing out on Bryce Young this year, they just decide to kick it down the road, and see what happens next year.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to say when it comes to the NFL draft. There's always next year, right? There's always time for next year. He has been Solak. He is Danny Kelly. They are going to keep you up to date on all things NFL draft. This is Through the Ringer, and we will be back on the other side of this with Van Lathan to do a little prop culture. All right, joining us back in the studio, you know him well, Higher Learning's very own Van Lathan. Van, we're talking Succession again. This is going to be a fun one. Spoiler alert, we got a new episode just came out, and my first question to you is a simple one. Will France make it?
We don't give a
Okay, that's America. That's our audience. Yeah. There was a lot of questions, a lot of meetings, a lot of conversations, right? And now we have a character that has gravitas again, right? We have Matsson. We're gonna have the whole setup with Kendall and Roman, and I feel like the first meeting between these three kind of set the tone of the episode. And this is a new age without Logan. What were your takeaways when you saw that first meeting? You saw how they handled it. They're now the guys.
Yeah. It was deeply, deeply, deeply troubling to watch those three people communicate. One guy is so obviously on another level, right? Like it just every time they would have a back and forth, just one of the most deadly lines I've ever seen in any show ever is when he looks at them and goes, "You guys are a tribute band." That is crazy. Do you understand how that encapsulates the feeling? I went to this performance of this band one time, and they were called the Cops. It was a police cover band, and the guy sounded exactly like Sting. And I went to this whole spiral of thinking, if there were no Sting, this guy would be Sting. Think about how his life would be if there was no actual Sting. And then I came back to these guys, and I'm thinking, might they be awesome if they didn't have to live up to Logan? And I thought about the way that line contextualizes every single scene that they're in with him, because we're watching them, but we're watching the ghost of Logan Roy even more so than them. They can't get past it. We can't get past it. and everybody in the room knows it. So it's almost excruciating watching them be little brothered, like little Boyd, in front of this guy who built everything himself. It's like almost like they're talking to their dad.
And it was also, I thought, the way that the episode started, like, kind of tipping back to the first pilot where it's Kendall, he's going to work, he's listening to music, right? He's listening to Jay-Z, and he is the man, right? He is the leader again. And we saw it in the first episode because Logan is sick, and he's going to the office, and he's like, I'm head honcho. And it feels like it reset that same moment. It's obviously same but different. And then he gets back in the situation. He's talking to Hugo. He's leaking some things to the press. Obviously, Roman is not privy to some of that stuff that's coming out, but Shiv seems to be on top of it, right? There's all these moves that are being made to say, okay, Kendall, that kind of that glimmer in his eye is back where he sees the throne, right? He sees the prize. Now he's sitting on the throne, and it seems like he's feeling it a little bit more, and so much so that him and Roman are kind of making their own decisions, right? And they're saying, let's tank the deal.
Yeah.
Let's let these guys flounder, and let's keep doing the job because guess what? We're kind of good at it. We kind of like it. How much is that fascinating, and how much are you buying into the fact that these two guys might end up, and we'll talk about the props, but they look like they don't want to be interim. They want to just do this thing and run this thing like they're the guys.
Nobody wants to be interim. Every single coach that's had the interim tag placed on him goes, man, if I can just get a 4-game winning streak.
It's up.
Maybe they'll give me the job.
Jeff Saturday in the NFL this year.
Jeff Saturday. Remember Ed Ogeron? Ed Ogeron gets the interim job over at, I think it was at SC, and they start playing well. And then it's like, are they going to hire him? They didn't. And he came down to Baton Rouge, and, the results were mixed. High highs, low lows. But
you got a championship.
But you got a championship, not just a championship, the championship. Don't get me started in here, Tate. But no, so to your point, the moment that Kendall was able to successfully navigate and position himself as the leader of the company, I knew it would be hard for him to give it up because this essentially validates him in a way that his father never did. Like his father never thought that that Kendall was worth, or Kendall had enough moxie giving him the job as the oldest guy. But the fact that he was able to get it, and even the brilliant narrative device of having that line where you're not sure whether it's through his name or under his name. The reality is, as an audience, we probably think he's been crossed out, but Kendall always believed in the back of his mind that he would someday be underlined, right? And so he underlined himself. And now, of course, they don't want to give it back. They want to prove that they are who they think that they are, and that their father was wrong about them. And as long as they look at things that way, they'll always make decisions that are in the best interest of themselves and not the company that they're supposed to represent, which is a problem.
Yeah, to go back to the tribute band, it's kind of like, you have Queen, right? But then you have Adam Lambert, and he's stepping in as Freddie Mercury. And it's like, he just wants to be the lead singer of Queen, right? Yeah. And he just wants to go out there and perform and say, look at the talent that I have in this position. And like you said, if there was no Freddie Mercury, maybe this guy, he could be him, but there's already been them. And that is like, they're fighting the ghost of their father and what he did before. And I think the most fascinating moment, dramatic moment, whatever you want to call it, they go up in the Wes Anderson, little boxcar. They go to the top of the mountain.
By the way, never happening to me. Never going to happen.
Never going to happen for me either.
We go to Norway or something like that, and it's like, hey, we're going to go up and see a mountain, and you got to ride in a box on a cable to get to the top. The moment I thought that, I was like, that's one thing I'm never going to experience.
Right.
I'm never riding on that.
I'm not getting on that either.
I don't care.
I'm not even getting on the helicopter that Madsen was on.
I'm not getting on. I'm not like that. I'm from Louisiana. We don't ride in boxes. That's why people will talk about, hey, Van, we go skiing with the lifts. I'm in a hot tub when y'all come back. I'm scared of heights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
We'll play cards back at the lodge.
We'll play cards.
Yeah.
We'll do all kinds of things. Plus, you fall down, bang your knee on the skis. It's not fun. But I saw that scene. I don't know if were you gonna talk about the scene where it's the two brothers and Madsen, and he's
right. They're on the top of the mountain, and then Roman kind of breaks, right, because this is obviously all negotiating. And you talk about the professional versus the personal, and obviously their father just passed away, and you can see it affecting him. Madsen calls Logan a prick, you know what I mean, and that kind of breaks Roman a little bit, and then he goes up and kind of just tells him off and says, we're never doing this deal. We don't plan to do this deal. And then Madsen kind of laughs at him and is like, I see your hand, right? You played your hand. You kind of broke in front of me. But it was also this amazing moment of drama. What was the big takeaway for you there, and what do we expect to see? What did Mattson – obviously he gives them a great number. They're celebrating. They're drinking champagne. But little do they know that Roman just told him, we're never going to sell to you. Yeah. And it's kind of like we know something that nobody else knows, as the viewer.
So that scene's brilliant to me. I think it's Kieran Culkin's best acting I've ever seen him do. It's one of the finest scenes in this show. It's not that they don't know that Logan is a – it's that Logan just died.
Right. And you flew me out here.
You flew me out here. Nobody is a – well, some people are. Like right after they die. Mm-hmm. Like what we do is we remember what we loved about them.
Right.
And we remember how they affected our lives. Mm-hmm. And Roman is in that space. He's in that space of not being Logan Roy's son, but just being somebody's son, period. And he's remembering the things that his dad taught him. He's remembering the fact that he's a part of a family, and he's not in the emotional space to have somebody call his dad a And the fact that you would do that, that's why he calls him a dog man, something less than human. The fact that you would do that shows, hey, you're not a real person, and I don't want to add to the power or influence that you would have because you're so you're even more than we are, and everybody's been watching this show knows how we are. I don't want to be a part of your ascension or you having more influence or control in the world. You're just a screwed up person. And the way his mind glitched and he went directly to that was amazing. On the backside of it, though, the fact that they still lost, the fact that he had his most human moment that I've ever seen the character have, the fact that even in that moment, like Kendall, he didn't even try to get in his way. He just went Roman went to it, that he still lost that exchange. On the backside of it, Mattson still outmaneuvered him. Whatever happened between him and Shiv in the room, the vibes or whatever, your brother's faces, he went way up. Like, in this realm that they're in, humans don't win. Numbers do. Mm-hmm. Big, swinging who can, institute and influence people with their control. That's what wins. That's what wins in this world. So the most relatable we've ever seen Roman, and he took the loss. And now, for the rest of the season, we get to see whether or not this group of kids, because they're not business powers anymore, they're just children at this point, can maintain their father's legacy and do right by the company and their emotions at the same time, and the country itself. I misspoke, but I really spoke right. So right now, it doesn't seem like they can win. It seems like Mattson, who is an amazing stand-in for Logan Roy.
He really is.
An amazing stand-in.
He creates the friction that you need, and that was really the question when Logan left. It's like, where does the drama, where does the friction come from? And immediately, the last episode, it felt like almost a little bit of purgatory as we got ready for the new run. And now, as soon as he got on screen, he has the hood up. He almost looks like a Sith Lord, right? And you go, and sit down with him, and you're like, oh my god,
gotta get Tate on the Ringerverse. see, Tate, you're goddamn so varied. You're a Renaissance man. Me and Tate sit down, we watch the game. Tate's telling me about the kid. Tate knows where the kids went to junior high school at. Tate's like, yeah, this kid right here, like back in 1999, people were looking. I'm like, what the is going on? And now I know you know about Sith Lords. Tate, are you a closet nerd?
I got my Mandalorian helmet right up there.
Oh, look at
brought that from home. I know the new season wasn't the best, but first season got
Tate,
my heart.
Why don't you come into the circle of nerds?
I'm in.
No, you're not. No, because you talk about cool. You're outside on the periphery of nerddom because you know so much about basketball and all of that stuff. You tell me you hang out with a lot of cool people and we talk about it. Just come over, Tate. Just be one of us.
I'm over. I'm there. I'm
sure?
right there. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in the circle. I'm in the circle of
But
trust.
look how I'm dressed as compared to you.
I know.
Like you got a blazer on. Like you're a real person. Look, I'm a 43-year-old man. Look at me. This is ridiculous.
I'm trying to get like you. That's all it is. I'm trying to get like you. All right. One last thing before we move on from Succession.
Sure.
We got the updated odds. We had Kendall and Roman. You and I both were on them.
Okay.
I think there's two. There's kind of the road less traveled. There's diverging paths that are happening on the show. If they do not sell, obviously, Kendall and Roman are the favorites.
True.
But if they do sell, I think we pretty much assured the fact that Roman is not going to be involved in the new.
He's done.
Right, he's done after what he said to Madsen. Kendall, I think for maybe there's a chance he's in there, but I don't
package deal.
Maybe they're a package deal. Maybe they stay together. But I think Shiv is the one. Like you said, they had their little meeting. Is Shiv right now kind of the under the radar dark horse if the sale does go through to take over?
Man, I'll tell you one thing. If the sale goes through and Shiv heads up the company under Madsen, that is such a monumentally messy situation. But you'd have to say so, right? It's certainly not going to be Tom. Tom has been neutered in one of the most spectacular ways. You just find new ways to cut his off every single scene that he's in. But yeah, it seems like she will be right there. There's something between them. The scene that she shared with Madsen, where she essentially used her media savvy to work her way into his inner circle. And, she's got some blood on him, literally and figuratively. She knows something. She's got some skin in the game. So you think that if the sale goes through, the odds are way in Shiv's favor that she would be the top dog there, right?
Yeah, and Greg showed his face to Madsen for the first time, and then Madsen made some jokes about them, all being a part of a family. And we also saw Greg try to curry favor with the family, right? Greg has seen that Tom has been snipped, and he's saying, okay, the guy that I'm under doesn't necessarily track right now, so I'm going to go try to get back in the family. He's talking about the quad gods. He's talking about, the Roy Patrol, right? He's trying to make sure that he's all locked in with them, trying to figure out a nickname at the same time. Is there a chance that Greg also is in the conversation? Because I think Madsen liked Greg. I think he liked
Madsen liked Greg?
I think he liked his answer. I think he liked that he read The Economist.
At this point, Greg is starting to just really. So look, here's the thing about Greg. We talked about it before. I never knew kind of where Greg fit in, but Greg is becoming one of the most cringe characters in any show ever. The Quad Squad Roy Patrol situation was just like fantastic to me. I don't know. I think as we move forward, Greg's viability in the actual company itself, I feel it waning.
Okay.
So in terms of the Madsen situation, it's either going to be any of those Norse gods that he had sitting at the table with him while they were hanging out, or he's gonna keep Shiv. It was interesting to see at the end of the show, though, just whose head was on the chopping block in terms of the list that came out.
It was very Robert California. Who's on the list? Who's in there?
And she that she curated that list. So that tells you right there that she's probably in a good position to have some leadership stake there. And
it also showed that Tom probably will work under her, right? If it does go through, which I think that'll be a nice role reversal of power, where her ex-husband, by all intents and purposes, now has to suck up to her the same way he was her father.
Yeah.
I think that she's going to get some joy out of that, if I had to guess. Quickly, before we let you get out of here, we got to talk NBA Finals, because I know you know basketball. We love talking basketball. We got the Finals odds. Right now, who's the safest bet in your opinion? We got the Celtics are the favorite, plus 250, Bucks plus 350, Suns plus 410. Who is the safest bet to win the NBA championship right now? Because it feels like a lot of questions. Boston. Okay.
Boston to me.
Yeah.
Boston is a team that doesn't have injury concerns. Boston is a team that's basically intact from the finals run that they had last year. Robert Williams is healthier, I feel like, this year than he was last year. They've added Malcolm Brogdon. So
Sixth man of the year.
So I think the surest, safest bet is Boston. The only reason why I wouldn't say, obviously, Milwaukee has injury concerns. 76ers has injury concerns. Milwaukee has magnificent injury concerns. Only reason why I wouldn't say Denver is because Denver is still an unproven commodity in the playoffs. However, it's different now. They have a full team. They have Jamal Murray back. They have Michael Porter Jr. playing well. He's healthy. And, of course, anytime you add Harold Bryant to a team, you're going to become a juggernaut. But for them, they still have things to prove. Boston's made deep playoff runs before, not just even, when they made it to the finals. They've been to the Eastern Conference Finals before. If you look at all the teams that are playing well right now, they're the safest bet if you ask me.
All right, so on the flip side, what's the craziest bet, right? So there's some people that still believe in the Lakers. They're plus 2,000. You know, a lot of Knicks fans are talking. They're saying we like our squad. We like Josh Hart. We like Jalen Brunson. They're plus 3,500. Maybe you like the Kings, plus 3,900. I personally kind of like the Warriors at plus 850. But what's the craziest bet?
I like the Warriors at plus 850. I like the Warriors. I like the Warriors to like really dig down and use the veteran-laden team, the veteran chemistry that they have to kind of make a push. However, the Warriors have shown that even at full strength, they cannot figure out what they're doing on defense, which is the difference between this team and teams in years past. The Knicks are interesting. I really feel like if Julius Randle was playing in a way that was even on maybe a 9th or 10th grade level, then they could potentially be a very scary team in the East. Mm-hmm. But without him being able to figure out his game in the playoffs, which seems to be a trend now, I don't really feel like they're that much of a threat to the other teams if healthy. Although, people are going to hate and call me a homer. I think the Lakers are a legitimate threat to make the finals. I really do. I think the Lakers are a legitimate threat. When you look at the road that they have to go, obviously any matchup that they would have in the Western Conference Finals would be tough. When you look at the road that the Lakers have to go, a more favorable road for them, and the fact that they're playing pretty well right now. They have...
And if Anthony Davis plays like he did in the last game, he's the best player on the court pretty much in every series that they go through. Maybe him versus Curry, right, is a conversation, but AD is at that level when he is at that level.
AD playing well, getting big contributions from guys like Austin Reeves, who is a legitimately good NBA player.
I called him the American Luka Doncic.
Well, wow. So he's addicted to sweet tea. No, so like I really do feel like the Lakers have like a good chance. I mean, definitely to be in the West Finals, but maybe to sneak into the finals if things go right for them.
I like it. Well, he is Van Lathan. The podcast is Higher Learning. Van, thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll have you back. We'll talk Succession. We'll talk some basketball, maybe some Star Wars.
Yeah, we got a whole Lethal Weapon thing going on.
Right.
I mean,
I'm having fun.
I wouldn't call you Mel. I don't want to call you. Everybody knows how I feel. Why Mel? But we got a whole thing going on. This is working for me, Tate.
I like it. I like it. Appreciate you, Van.
No problem.